I'm John Menti, one of the technical content developers here at Uptycs, and today we'll explore what happens when attackers exploit cloud server vulnerabilities and demonstrate how Uptycs can ensure your infrastructure security. In this demonstration, the protect capabilities of Uptycs have been disabled. We're going to dive into a real-world attack scenario. Our focus is on the attacker utilizing Shodan, a powerful search tool to find vulnerable systems. Specifically, they're searching for a system using ActiveMQ's openware transport on port 61616, running the version 5.17.3. From the list of Shodan's results, the attacker picks a server and tries to initiate a port scan on the chosen IP address. The command scans the top 9,000 ports of the target IP address without performing a ping sweep to check for live hosts. An open port is discovered, revealing the very service the attacker hoped to find: ActiveMQ's openware transport, running on that vulnerable version 5.17.3. With a vulnerable system identified, they deploy an exploit code targeting the previously discovered ActiveMQ vulnerability. The exploit code is executed, and within moments, a reverse shell connection is established. The attacker now has a direct line into the system. Now let's check to see if Uptycs detected the activity. The AWS Risk Overview page lists the attacker's attempt among the top security issues to resolve. Clicking on it leads to the Risk Details page, showing the attacker's moves in the evidence graph, including the ActiveMQ vulnerability. By clicking on the ActiveMQ vulnerability under the EC2 instance in Security Findings, a list of vulnerabilities with known exploits appear. To learn more, click on the three dots next to the desired vulnerability and select See Details. By then clicking on Threats and Malware, followed by the detection in the list, you will find the detection graph next to Signals. The graph visualizes the breach's pathway, identifying how the reverse shell was established and pinpointing the compromised aspects of the system. With the initial access secured, our attacker moves deeper into the breach system. They proceed to execute a series of commands. For example, whoami reveals the current user's identity. cat/etc/password provides a snapshot of all the users on the system, and ID shows the user and group IDs. As these commands ripple through the system, Uptycs is already on alert. Navigating back to Threats and Malware, then moving to the detection graph, we identify all pertinent commands the attacker utilized from whoami to ID, capturing each execution attempt as it unfolds. The detection graph vividly delineates the attacker's progression, pinpointing the precise moment where the system's defenses were challenged. The attacker sets a cron tab recurring task to establish a connection from the target system to the attacker's machine via netcat on port 4444 every hour. Once the connection is established, it spawns a bash shell on the target's system, providing the attacker with interactive access to the target's command line. Heading back to Threats and Malware, you'll find the cron tab's path already detected in Signals, and in the detection graph, an alert among other useful information. Uptycs doesn't just note the anomaly, it understands its impact. The detection graph weaves a story of unauthorized persistence, illuminating the attacker's path through the system. Each node and connection represents a piece of the puzzle, revealing how the cron tab ties into the broader scheme of the attack. The attacker turns their attention to the crown jewels, sensitive files containing critical credentials. Their target, login.config, and Alice access keys.csv. The attempt to exfiltrate sensitive files triggers an immediate response from Uptycs. By going back to Threats and Malware in the Risk Details and navigating to the detection graph, we identify the curl command line targeting the CSVs. Right-clicking offers the option to carve and download the implicated CSV in a zipped format. The attempted exfiltration is a stark reminder of the constant threats in the digital landscape and underscores the resilience and preparedness of our defenses. With the critical data in hand, our attacker now turns their sights to the cloud environment. Using the credentials extracted from the previous steps, the attacker focuses on persistent access within the cloud. First, they create a new profile using the exfiltrated cloud user credentials. Moving away from threats and malware, we select misconfigurations from risk details. Here, under alerts, we locate the EC2 instance profile. Clicking on any of the alerts for further investigation reveals general information, metadata, and source details about the alert. For a deeper dive, we use the username or the access key ID to navigate to the Cloud Threat Investigation page. Here you will find more than just an overview. It provides a detailed account of who, what, when, and where, enriching the context within the cloud environment. But let's go back to the attacker. They now assume the role attached to the EC2 instance, exploiting the sensitive credentials, including access keys, secret keys, and tokens. Subsequently, they create a profile named Batman. Going back to misconfigurations from risk details and selecting the EC2 alert, we can investigate further by clicking on the username and heading to Cloud Threat Investigation, finding an overview of the operations log. This is captured in real time, providing a step-by-step breakdown of the attacker's activities, from role assumption to credential misuse. Using the previously acquired cloud user credentials, the attacker embarks on a mission to identify and revert to a policy version that grants the most extensive access. Using the new Batman profile, the attacker searches for a policy version embedded within the highest privileges. Let's see how Uptycs is handling it. When we navigate back to threats and malware from the risk details and select privilege escalation from the cloud detections, it reveals an assumed role and the modifications made. This approach not only illuminates the attacker's detailed strategies, but also highlights how the breach has evolved within the cloud environment. For a deeper investigation, clicking on the icon next to the access key ID takes us to the Cloud Threat Investigation page, offering more insight. Returning to the risk details and selecting identity and access, then role overly permissive, we observe the extent of the privilege escalation, showing that the attacker could potentially access all 378 services in AWS. A closer examination of the privilege policy attached by clicking on Role with Administrator Access and then on the icon under Policy Statement reveals the current policy statement alongside Uptycs' recommended policy, with our recommendations highlighted in the green box. The attacker initiates a meticulous scan, uncovering EC2 instances within the same network. Utilizing the netdiscover command with the specific IP range, they map out potential targets to laterally move across the infrastructure. Selecting the EC2 instance in the evidence graph allows exploration of other VMs within the same subnet or VPC by clicking Show Relationships and moving to AWS Cloud Discovery. Purple stars next to certain instances signify the storage of critical data like personal PA data or other sensitive information. Uptycs immediately identifies unauthorized snapshot activities and permission changes within its vigilant cloud security measures. The ASK graph presents potential inquiries related to this EC2 instance. In a calculated move, the attacker leverages the EC2 Instance Connect send SSH public key API to transmit a temporary SSH public key from the Victim 1 instance to the Victim 2 instance. This pivotal step not only signifies the attacker's entry into the cloud environment, but also their ability to navigate laterally with ease. Uptycs immediately flags it as a sign of lateral movement. By navigating back to threats and malware, selecting the relevant detection, under Signals, we pinpoint the command line involved. Our platform's algorithms for real-time monitoring and anomaly detection quickly notify security teams of this unusual activity. Moving to the detection graph, it becomes evident that the lateral movement was identified through our cloud-native application protection platform. Security teams are not just reacting, they are anticipating, equipped with data lineage and forensic tools to trace their attacker's steps and seal breaches with precision. Clicking on Victim 2 and opting for Go to User Analysis, then scrolling to User Activity Details, you will find the session details in the corner that follows the important commands in the attack path. By examining API call logs, SSH command transmissions, and unusual network patterns, Uptycs provides a detailed breakdown of the attack's pathways and their implicated resources. There's a lot of information here, so expand the window to get the full picture. Facilitating rapid containment and mitigation strategies, preventing further unauthorized access from ensuring the integrity of the cloud environment. Let's go back to the detection graph, but this time we'll right-click on Victim 2 and choose Show Detection. Now we navigate to the Detection Details page, where the exposed S3 buckets are clearly marked under the Signals section, giving us context into the breach. Moving forward to the detection graph, we gain a comprehensive view of the attacker's process and the corresponding impacted elements. It graphically represents signals, allowing analysts to trace suspicious processes and their interactions within the system. This detailed visualization not only illustrates the buckets that have been compromised through the command line, but also identifies potential targets for data theft, illustrating the risk in real time. For a practical demonstration, let's examine the Python 3.10 process. By right-clicking and selecting Show Files, we're presented with all the compromised data within the S3 buckets. To illustrate the severity of this breach, we'll carve out and download a file named mydata.txt. Upon examining the file, it becomes clear that the attacker has accessed extensive sensitive information from personal identifiers to operational details. Achieving lateral access, the attacker then targets S3 data, exploiting the permissions of the newly compromised instance. By synchronizing sensitive files to their S3 bucket, the attacker attempts a stealthy exfiltration, potentially exposing configuration details, personally identifiable information, or direct service credentials. Uptycs immediately identifies the unauthorized S3 sync operations as the attacker laterally moves to another VM. To explore the detections, we return to the evidence graph and select misconfigurations, then the relevant alert. Utilizing advanced threat detection and data protection protocols, our platform notifies teams of the suspicious data flow. Through detailed logging and analysis of access patterns, we pinpoint the compromised buckets and data. This enables swift actions to revoke access, resecure data, and adjust policies, thereby strengthening defenses against such threats. As the attacker moves to other VMs and accesses S3 buckets, we can see what the detections are by right-clicking on Data Exfiltration, selecting Show Graph, then Misconfigurations and the connecting alert, which takes us to Cloud Threat Investigations. The attacker devises a strategy to extract a large volume of data from the cloud by forcing an EBS volume. First, they obtain a volume ID from the targeted EC2 instance. Using this ID, the attacker creates a snapshot of the volume, then checks the snapshot's status with its ID. Next, they modify the snapshot's permission to allow an external account to create volumes from it. Finally, the attacker creates a new volume in their own account from the shared snapshot. The moment snapshot creation and permission alterations are detected, Uptycs swiftly responds. Our platform's comprehensive monitoring of the cloud environment meticulously tracks changes in the snapshot's lifecycle and permissions, promptly alerting security personnel. This allows us to examine the variety of API calls executed by the attacker. Uptycs provides critical insight into the nature and extent of the attack, facilitating the quick reversal of permission changes and securing deletion of unauthorized snapshots. Following the previously outlined steps, we click on the icon next to the access key in the metadata, leading us to Cloud Threat Investigations. For every action the attacker takes, there's an equal and informed response. Security teams are armed with the knowledge they need to respond effectively, containing the threat and safeguarding the system against further intrusion. Well, that's going to do it for our deep dive into navigating and neutralizing cloud threats. Now, naturally, Uptycs won't allow a hacker to reach our most valuable asset, so stay tuned for part 2 of this video where we'll demonstrate how Uptycs blocks the attacker right from the start.